حي على الفلاح.
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم، وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله.
This Azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
Broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Yes, indeed, broadcasting 24 hours a day. And welcome to our live show now. This is Community Matters, the radio show for all communities across Peterborough and beyond, with me, Adrian Holdstock. Community Matters asks questions that matter to our community life. As always, there are many topics and issues to discuss, and tonight we have some great guests joining me in the studio to talk about the world we live in, the environment, and climate change. My first guests are Anna Bunton and Virginia Alfaro from Extinction Rebellion. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi, welcome to you both. Anna, you're a mum of two wonderful children and a nurse who has worked in the city for 20 years. You've made Peterborough your home and consider yourself to be a Peterborian. What do you like about Peterborough?
I think it's, Peterborough's got a lovely diverse community, and actually I found since I've been here that community's been very supportive. I found a lot of friendship, and I guess that's what makes a home a wonderful place to be.
Wonderful. Well, it's great to have you on the show. And now, Virginia, you're much newer to Peterborough, having come here from a little city in Spain, your home country, 4 years ago. You teach languages, and especially Spanish, in what you've described as a beautifully diverse academy. And you've told me that you are very grateful for the opportunities and support you're finding in this community, and proud to call it home. That's wonderful. What so attracted you to Peterborough?
Well, I came here a little bit by accident, really. I came to England. I didn't know anything about Peterborough, and I ended up just founding a wonderful community and, just feeling very inspired by lots of things I was seeing. So I'm really happy to feel welcome here and stay here.
Wonderful. Yeah. So we're here to talk about climate change, the environment, saving planet Earth, and you are both members of Extinction Rebellion. So what is that?
Well, Extinction Rebellion is really a community of people. So it's a leaderless organisation. It really is just ordinary people. You, me, anybody on the street that you see could potentially be a member of Extinction Rebellion. So it's really come about from people who are actually very concerned about what's going on in the environment at the moment, and are recognising that actually there's a level of urgency that needs to be responded to, which directly affects us potentially, but certainly it affects our children and future generations if we don't have this conversation together. And so, it is just people coming together and then being able to talk about that, so that we can come up with a response, and hopefully together we can talk to, our leaders and people, the government, to maybe make some changes so that we can protect the future.
So it's not something you formally join, like a political party, or?
No, in this is considered a social movement. Therefore, everyone is autonomous, is completely decentralized. As individuals, if you have that concern, if you share that principles or values that they share on their website, you're more than welcome to just walk in and join one of the local groups or working groups. There's all sorts of opportunities. You can just be a member of a choir, sing with them. It's all sorts of things you can do.
Right. Can you remember when you first became concerned about the environment and climate change?
I think I have always been. I didn't feel right in concrete places. I always wanted to go out to the wild, and I'm an animal lover. I love documentaries. I have seen a decline on things on my own, like flying insects. I could see physically that they were disappearing here and there. So I love gardening as well. That took me a lot into these issues, and I have always been, but I have never been this aware of how drastic the situation was becoming. And
What about you, Anna?
Well, I suppose I've got a similar experience in that, when I grew up, I had a fascination with the natural world. In fact, I started my life in Nigeria, where, nature is really big. Baboons come and visit your garden and steal from your dustbin, And being a young child, my sister and I, we really enjoyed sort of looking at lizards and snakes and insects. When we came back to England, we kind of continued that exploration of nature on. So most of my childhood was probably examining bushes and looking under stones, or gazing into rock pools, looking at what nature had to offer for us. As I got older and I had children, I think maybe I've kind of just moved into city life, and I've more thought about ethical choices and tried to think about living a life which has sort of, perhaps a light impact, and, thought about recycling. And, I have solar panels, which I thought I was doing my bit, but it wasn't really until the spring of this year that I became aware of actually perhaps the significant seriousness of the situation that we're in at the moment. And particularly that was from actually becoming aware of Extinction Rebellion. They have a talk called the Heading for Extinction talk, where you can watch it on YouTube, or you can actually go to an event and listen to this talk, and it's actually sort of formed from a lot of informed opinion about what's happening. So it really joins up the dots. So things that I was concerned about, like plastic pollution, but equally like what Virginia's saying about the insect decline, talking about decline in marine life and acidification of the oceans. And they bring all that together and give a really stark warning that actually if we don't make radical changes, this is actually quite a near-time emergency. And I think when I heard that first, that was a huge shock to me. I hadn't realised how bad things were. It took a while for me to internalise that. One of the things that came out of the IPCC report, which is that report that was released to the United Nations in 2018 October, was this warning that if we don't rapidly move towards renewable energy, so we don't reduce, the fossil fuel use, then what will happen is that we will actually face a potential collapse of the ecosystem. And what resonated with me when I heard that is that is potentially going to happen in my children's lifetime. And to be honest, that frightened me.
Indeed. But the little things that we can do in our own homes might make us feel better about the climate, but are they really going to make a difference?
Well, in the bigger scheme of things, not really. They can be they can have a huge impact, really. But only if our system grows within it. We need to change the consumerist way of life that we've got. And I think that that's from that to eating more seasonally, there's lots of things that we can do, but yet that may not be enough.
Yeah, it's interesting really, because one of the things that I've reflected on, because having sort of, if you like, opened my eyes to the way we're living and perhaps really looked at that sort of capitalist consumerist sort of system that we have and how that's affecting is what I can see is in the last 20 years that really, things have really advance at a massive rate. So, I think the dawn of internet shopping, and we now know that anything that we could possibly think about, we could just buy at a click of a button, and that'll be delivered from China. We know that there's massive, amounts of production, and lots of that stuff is ending up in landfill. I guess a short example would be that I've worked for a charity called Festival Medical Services for about 20 years, delivering nursing care. And one of the things that I've noticed now, and I think people may have seen this, is, when young people are going to festivals now, on the last day, they're all leaving their tents behind and they're leaving lots of rubbish and with no sort of thought as to the value of that product, of the carbon footprint of the raw materials that were actually extracted from the earth in order to make that product. That sort of thing didn't happen 20 years ago when I was actually, at festivals. People packed up their tents and took them home. So I think this sort of consumerist idea and that throwaway culture, it does seem to be escalating. We just seem to be losing sight of what our human impact is on the world.
So I'm hearing that there are two levels of our society of which we have a real problem. One is the culture of the way we have become consumerist and throwaway. But the other is at the level in which we are governed. And, for example, our consumption of energy, our consumption of oil, the number of aircraft and flights that we have, and the suggestion we need even more airports and even more runways seems to go against the opportunity that we should be making to save the planet.
I suspect really that these things are all really the same conversation, aren't they? Because the actual government system it's based on growth. It's based on that ability to actually go into the earth and extract from more raw materials, to make goods out of them and to sell them in order to create wealth, which then obviously will, sort of grow the economy. And that, is seen as perhaps a way of making life better. But I think in reality on the ground, we're noticing that, this is actually conflicting with the laws of nature, and it's making our ecosystem very unstable. And generally look around, I'm not convinced that people are looking happier for all of these sort of goods and things that they're having either.
What do you think, Virginia?
Well, I think that it's definitely this system and this leadership that is taking us to this climate breakdown as well. I think they are not leaving a space for this regenerative culture that we talk about in Extinction Rebellion to happen. There's so much time for action in our lives and so little time for rest that actually we are becoming in a very... It's a cycle that really reflects with what we're doing to our earth. That is not ours. It's the lovely place we have been welcomed into. We are exploiting it so much that we are not giving it time to regenerate. So, it's all part of a very toxic system that we are living in. And I think it's very dangerous if we don't awake to this reality and actually put our priorities in order.
So therefore, how do we respond? Because if we just take a little bit more interest in insects and animal life and plant life and the food that we eat, and perhaps not using plastic bags and so on, that's really not going to solve the problem, is it? We had an industrial revolution which had been going on, and in a way, after the 2 world wars in this country, we seem to have another industrial revolution of rebuilding the country with work, with labour, with factories, and that continued our wealth creation. But now we need yet another revolution. And I noticed from the website a fascinating web address that Extinction Rebellion has. It's called rebellion.earth. But the word rebellion can be inflammatory. We can wonder that Extinction Rebellion is about breaking the law, is about getting the headlines. Is that really what you're about? You seem such nice people.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing, isn't it? I think for many years that there have been some really good work from environmental campaigners, so Friends of the Earth and Greenpeace, and people have been writing to their MPs, they've been going on marches. So I think there's been a lot of interest over the years, people saying, look, you've got to see your impact. But unfortunately, it seems to be perhaps it's been sort of low down on the political policy. It's very difficult, I think, really for perhaps politicians to make very bold green plans anyway, because they're worried about what's going to happen. They've got a 5-year electoral cycle. They're worried about sort of unpopular plans that may have a backlash in the ballot box for them as well. And I think in reality, we need to step back, don't we? And we need to realise that this is causing us some issues.
Yeah, obviously, as Anna was saying, the reason why Extinction Rebellion is destructive is because nothing else has worked so far. And there's been like 30 years of really heavy work on environmental issues from all sorts of backgrounds in all sorts of countries. There is a lot of... Thank you. There is a lot of interest. It seems to be a lot of interest on these elites to maintain that status quo that is obviously taking our planet and our communities to a very dangerous place. So the idea of being destructive it comes from all this history of non-violent direct action being a very successful way. Non-violent direct action, breaking the law with love, being a very successful way of changing the thrives. And the plan is a little bit cause economical damage to the system, because it seems to be one of the main factors that drives our system. Mm-hmm. And obviously, hopefully, it should inform governments to actually appearing in the media and so on to change a little bit public opinion, or at least make people wonder. And therefore, it should enforce governments to actually listen or answer to the demands that we're making, which we know nothing else has seemed to work so far.
Well, nothing has. I mean, we've had Greenpeace and we've had the Green Party, but now we've got Extinction Rebellion. And I noticed from the website, International Rebellion begins on Monday the 7th of October. And there's even a search tool on there, what events are coming up by date or by location. And there's nothing scheduled for Peterborough. Should we be pleased or worried?
Well, actually, Peterborough is, there will be a lot of people from Peterborough who will be going down to London as well. So, the action, it is an international action, as you say. So it's happening in a number of cities across the world. So it's actually happening in Los Angeles, San Diego, Toronto, Washington, DC, New York, Montreal, Buenos Aires, Dublin, Madrid, London, Paris, Amsterdam, Berlin, Prague, Vienna, Cape Town, New Delhi, Mumbai, Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane and Wellington. So, this really is an international movement. So I think one of the things is that the money flow really in the UK goes through London. So it makes sense that unfortunately, we will have to go to London and disrupt that in order, because we're fighting, I guess, against a very big force which is holding us back. And so therefore we need to make our voice heard. And so that's why, the whole of the country will be coming together in London. So hopefully, as a group, we will be able to actually make a point, and as Virginia said, it's really important. This is a peaceful protest, so we're going there with respect. It's a no-blame culture. So this isn't about the fact that there are good guys and that there are bad guys. We are all in it together. Mm. We all need the planet. But we're just aware of the urgency of this, that we just can't hold back. We need action. We need it now. There are so many, sort of people who are coming out and sharing that. So, for instance, Maria Neira, who's the World Health Organization Director of Public Health and the Environment, she's told us that morally, if we delay transitioning to renewable energies, we are responsible for millions of deaths worldwide. This is a very serious matter, so it's not taken lightly. It is taken with full respect, and it is taken with love in our heart, and it's love for our planet. it's love for our children, and it's love for the loss of, the ecology, the ecocide that's happening if we don't. So we feel we have no choice, and we're very respectful even to the police that are there who are, who were very supportive in April when we were there the last time. There were some really moving moments where, the police were sort of doing their job and arresting people, but at the same time, I saw an officer who was in tears, holding back the tears as the crowd was singing very beautiful songs about their love of the earth. I was talking to a police officer who was telling me how he had given up red meat because he was aware of the impact of, sort of red meat on the planet as well. So this really is something that we're all in it together. And actually, it's not just going to be Extinction Rebellion who are going to be there in London. The fascinating thing is that there's actually a movement of movements, because we're aware, and I think you mentioned it earlier, that the word rebellion sounds a little bit uncomfortable to some people. And it's really important that people can come and they can contribute in the way that feels right for them. And so actually, there's going to be doctors for Extinction Rebellion are going to be there. There's going to be nurses for Extinction Rebellion. There's going to be lawyers, solicitors. So there's all sorts of groups. There's an animal rebellion for animal activists as well. And again, everybody's going in that kind of non-violent direct action approach. But we're all going because we all care and we want to support, the message to get out there that this is urgent and we can't wait.
Who do you think will listen and take action?
So after the April Rebellion, which we were 10 days, 11 in London, we blocked 4 different locations, 1,000 and something, I think 100 people were arrested during those days, peacefully arrested, with charges like obstructing the highway. Yeah, that's the one. Thank you. And it really raised up the profile of the climate emergency in this country. Suddenly, the Parliament was talking about it a lot. Suddenly, a survey after these actions took as a result that 75% of people in Britain are concerned about the climate situation. So I don't think I can answer who's going to listen. I think we're going to make some noise, and probably it's going to be a very beautiful noise, and we hope that everyone that wants to listen will.
It must be difficult getting the balance right, because I imagine that the media will look for the sensational pictures to show, such as today, where Extinction Rebellion were firing from an old fire engine red liquid across the Treasury to say, you, the Treasury, are spending money which is ruining our planet. It did actually make for a bit of a comedy show, because they lost control of the hose, a high-pressure hose, and it floated all over. Most of the liquid went over the road rather than over the walls of the Treasury. But then the other headline that I guess Extinction Rebellion don't want to see are people trying to disrupt flights from airports where that is using drones, and that could be a danger to people's safety, both people in the air and if an aircraft were to crash, people on the ground. That is a step too far, surely.
Yeah, so the rationale behind a concern about the airports, obviously, is if you consciously are aware, Parliament said we are in a climate emergency. So then, you then have to have the second part, which is to act as if you mean that. And I think, there are a number of people who are worried that actually if we're increasing, the airports, so there's going to be another, runway at Heathrow, or, we're increasing our fracking, that really we're saying that we're worried about something, but we're doing nothing about it. And so there were a number of people who wanted to raise that as an issue, to say, well, actually, if we are worried, let's act like we're worried. I think initially there were some early plans about putting drones in the air when there were no flights, and I think that you have to differentiate, so certainly not to endanger life, because that's not a peaceful action. But actually, one thing that Extinction Rebellion does is it holds regular people's assemblies, so it brings people together and allows people to discuss actions and to come up with an action consensus. And from that action consensus, you then can decide, where are the limits of an action? What are we prepared to do? What are we prepared to disrupt, and what are we not? What's too far? And certainly when Extinction Rebellion raised this earlier in the year, thinking about that action in the summer, it was actually dropped through the People's Assemblies as something that, overall, Extinction Rebellion didn't want to do at that time.
So there is a sense of control, and how to manage the passion and the frustration that some people may have.
But at the same time, we are all here as individuals. It's a decentralized movement, so there's autonomy as well. We work by what we call affinity groups, and each of those groups are literally groups with people that you have affinity with, and you make your own autonomous decisions, and you can take action as far as you align with the values and principles of Extinction Rebellion. So it's only so much that you can call control in a social movement like this, and obviously as individuals. Yes.
Now, I imagine many people may have seen the news item where Greta Thunberg, age 16, from Sweden, was allowed to speak to the United Nations, and she told global leaders she would never forgive them for failing on climate change. "You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones," she said. Do you think our children should tell us off for being naughty about the climate?
Actually, it's difficult, isn't it? Because, I think we're used to a society where we think, children should be quiet and respectful. But actually, what Greta's saying is quite right. So, going back to the IPCC report that was, sort of released to the United Nations, the special report in October, one of the things that they said was that actually, we'll be spending, if we want to limit, the temperature rises to 1.5 degrees, if we have a 66% chance of doing that, because anything beyond that is going to cause much more significant impacts to the future of these young people, then we need to radically decarbonise society. And in fact, we've got to reduce it from now right up until, sort of January 2028. If we carry on as business as usual, we'll have spent the world's carbon budget and we'll be past that point where we can actually bring it back. So you're talking about a child who's 10 years old today. What we do in the next 8 years before they come to childhood will largely impact on the rest of their lives.
Well, we're down to the last 30 seconds. How can people find out more? How can people in Peterborough find out more and take action?
You can go to the website, extinction.earth.org. You can go to the Facebook page for the local group, for example, Extinction Rebellion Peterborough, or find us on the streets in London, really. You can go.
On the streets of London, which day?
We start on the 7th. The idea is to be there for 2 weeks. So.
That's Monday, starting Monday, for every day for 2 weeks.
Yes, and Saturday night we're going to have a little gathering in Peterborough Square as well.
Say that again, Saturday night?
Saturday night we're having a little gathering just in Peterborough Cathedral Square, just to get together of the people that care about the environment.
Wonderful. What time will that be?
It's starting at...
I think we said 5?
Yeah, 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock in Cathedral Square in Peterborough to care for our planet and look for change. Thank you very much, Anna and Virginia from Extinction Rebellion, for joining me tonight on the show. It's an urgent challenge that we have, and we're going to hear a little more after the break. Do stay tuned, because we're also going to hear about a keen mountaineer with a challenge to raise funds for children of Adam, and meet our studio guest, who's going to explore what may be God's view of climate change. That's all for now.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
The masjid is a center of spirituality, education, and a social hub for the community. In the times of the Blessed Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, the masjid lay at the heart of society and was not just a place of sanctuary and prayer, but also a thriving educational institution. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is reported to have said, "Whoever builds a masjid for Allah, be it large or small, Allah will build for him a house in paradise." Sunnah al-Tirmidhi. The role of the masjid has always been instrumental in the educational, social and moral uplifting of the Muslim community. Please donate by visiting childrenofadam.net or call us on 0300 321 0032.
Had a car accident or an accident at work? Accident specialists are experts in no-win, no-fee accident claims. Leave the hassle to us. Our multilingual settlement experts will manage the entire claims process on your behalf. with nothing to pay up front. We provide services such as credit hire, taxi vehicles, recovery, storage and much more. For full details on our range of services and a free consultation, call us on 01733 555 774 or visit our office at 249 Lincoln Road opposite the NatWest Bank. Accident Specialists. Start your successful claim today.
Feel like some great tasting chicken tonight? Great meal deals, wraps, burgers and sides. We've got it all at Chicken Palace. Call and collect at 302 Lincoln Road on 01733 702 447 or 8 Park Road on 01733 343750. Chicken Palace, open 11 a.m. till late.
दोस्ता की परेशान है
जरा कर है ना सारा सौदा मुक्या वा मुल्का विच पैसे भेजने
हूं नहीं अमार फूड वाले की फोन खड़का ते फ्री लोकल डिलीवरी कार मंगवा
आलाता उथे कै स्पेशल आ
उन्हां की लबाई हाइजीन च ग्रेड 5 चीजें चंगियां मियारी ते सस्तियां ते नाले ऑफरां ही ऑफरां
और क्या
ताजा गोश्त ताजी सब्जियां ते फ्रूट आटा चावल दालां मसाले ते जूस सारे बिल जमा करने गैस ते इलेक्ट्रिक ने टॉप अप भी करने पाकिस्तान पैसे बिल्कुल फ्री भेजने मतलब के एक चिड़ी ने दूध छड़ी ते हर शय लबनी
और जने ने आप उतरा
Amar Food Store and Halal Meat 613B Lincoln Road Peterborough telephone 01733 687374
Gems and jewels, wise sayings, interesting events, and moral lessons from Islamic history. Sustenance.
Among the signs of faith is that one does not look to please others and incur Allah's anger in that process. One avoids praising others for the sustenance that they have received from Allah, the Exalted, and also refrains from blaming others for sustenance that he has not received from Allah the Exalted. Allah's distribution of provision is not increased for a recipient by the amount of greed or ambition that he shows, nor is it blocked by his hate or envy. Allah, in his infinite justice, grants provision and contentment for those with strength of faith and satisfaction with what is divinely ordained. Likewise, misery and discontent are for those that live with doubt and anger. Let us be satisfied with His will.
Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salam Radio.
Yes, indeed, this is Salam Radio on 106.2 FM and online at salamradio.co.uk with me, Adrian Holdstock. Welcome back to our Community Matters show, the radio show for all communities in Peterborough and beyond. We've another guest with me in the studio helping us to think about planet Earth. But first, I've got a call from Imtiaz Ali, who's fundraising for children of Adam. Let's see if we've got Imtiaz there.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Adrian. How are you?
Hi, Imtiaz. Hi. Welcome. You're going to be doing the Three Peaks Challenge this weekend.
That's right. That's the plan. Yeah, really looking forward to it. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, to be honest. It's getting quite close now, so getting a bit nervous about it. But yes, the Three Peaks Challenge, 3 of the tallest peaks in the UK in 24 hours, and we have to do about 500 miles of driving as well in between. So it should be really exciting.
Do you know how much walking you're going to be doing? How much up and down?
Yeah, absolutely. So in total, there's about 23 miles of walking, which is just short of a marathon. And then in terms of up and down, we have 1,400-foot climb at, sorry, not 1,400, 1,400 meters at Ben Nevis, about 900 meters at Scuffle Pike, and then just over 1,000 meters for Snowdon. So it's going to be a total of 3.5k up and 3.5k down, alongside close to a marathon's worth of walking, and like I said, 500 miles of driving as well. So, yeah.
So the 3 tallest mountains in Scotland, England and Wales. And
right.
How is this going to help fundraise?
Right, so that's the challenge. The actual fundraising is for Children of Adam. Children of Adam did a fantastic project a couple of years ago where they did a Mount Snowdon climb to raise funds for the Amazon Children's Ward in the Peterborough Hospital. And there they equipped the ward with some really good equipment in their sensory room to help children to just relax and play with toys and so on while they were there as inpatients. They've been in touch with the hospital again, and the hospital have said there's a really good opportunity to help spruce up the bathroom. So, you know, when you have children as inpatients, they obviously need to bathe. There's a bathroom facility there, but it's not very child-friendly. It's a bit clinical, it's a bit cold. And what Children of Adam want to do is raise enough funds to decorate that bathroom, give it some bright colours, put some cartoon characters on the wall, get some bath toys, and they just spruce up the place and just make it a lot more child-friendly.
Another way to help the children who are very poorly to feel a bit better about themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the.
How can people sponsor you?
Okay, so I think Salam Radio has a show that I do, Salam Sports, so people can find me there. Obviously, if they find me on Facebook, then the link is on my Facebook page. So, yeah, genuinely, I'd urge all your listeners to try and find me on Facebook, Imtiaz Ali, and then find the Just Giving page. Obviously, donations go directly to Children of Adam, which is a local Peterborough charity that are obviously working with Salam Radio. And, yeah, any little helps. You know, if somebody wants to donate £1, we'll be happy to accept £1. If you want to donate more, then you're more than welcome. I've got a personal fundraising target of £1,000, and I'm up to about 650 so far. So yeah, any help your listeners can give to me in getting that target would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely, I'm sure we will. So to find you through Salam Radio website or your own Facebook page, Imtiaz Ali, look for the giving page and stick those donations in. Let's get
Absolutely.
that 650, certainly up to 1,000, and see if we can get beyond and provide a beautiful environment for children who are sick in our city hospital to have a better experience when they need to be washed and cleaned and bathed.
Yeah,
Imtiaz, thank you very much. Very good luck. I hope the weather is fine for you.
Thank you, Adrian, and do keep us in your prayers. And I do ask all the listeners to keep us in your prayers as well. And hopefully we get back in one piece.
Wonderful. Come and tell when you're back. Come and tell us how it goes.
Absolutely, I will do. Appreciate the time. Thank you very much, Adrian.
Bye bye now.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Now to my studio guest. He is a professor, indeed, emeritus professor at Cardiff University, where he taught Christian practical theology for 40 years. Here in our city, he is secretary to the Peterborough Eco-Faith Network, an offshoot of Churches Together in central Peterborough. Welcome, Professor Paul Ballard.
Thank you very much indeed.
Now, I'm always interested in how people have arrived and made Peterborough their home. Having taught for 40 years in Cardiff, what brought you to Peterborough?
We decided that we needed to be near our family, and one of our daughters lives and works in Peterborough and the other in London, so that's the reason for coming to Peterborough.
Wonderful. And how long have you been here now?
Just on 10 years.
10 years. Does that qualify you to be called a Peterborian?
No, it does not. I go to the Longthorpe Society, and it's quite clear that there are two groups of people: the Peterborians who are born and bred, and those of us who have come even in the 1970s.
Gosh, right. Now, you taught Christian practical theology. I know what Christian is,
yes,
but not everyone will know what theology is, and particularly practical theology.
Right. What is theology? Theology is thinking and reasoning and reflecting on the relationship between God and the world and creation, and how God works with us and comes to us. Practical theology is about how this relates to the communities of faith, the civic communities, the people, things that we do and things that we work with and so on, the practice of life. So how does our religion, our faith, relate to the practice of life? That's what practical
How did
theology.
you come to be teaching that subject?
That is a very long story, and I'm not sure whether we've got time for that. Basically, two things. One is that I met the works of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and that drove me to taking the world seriously, taking the everyday life, the political, the historical world seriously. And secondly, I was given a job to look after a new course that was, in fact, about practical theology. So I had to learn from scratch.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer, of course, was a German pastor.
Yes.
In the 1930s and 1940s.
Yes.
Despite living under a Nazi regime, he stood up against the Nazi ways in which Germany was being run.
Indeed, he was killed by them. He's counted a Christian martyr.
But he wrote some wonderful books
Yes.
that help us think through our relationship with God.
Yes, he did. It's a bit piecemeal because he never grew up, as it were. He was only 39 when he died, so he never sort of rounded off his career. But yes, they're worthwhile looking at to mine for ideas and reflections.
Now, if you're teaching practical theology, there must be students learning it.
Oh, yes.
What sort of people would come on your course?
I suppose that the core would be people who are going into some sort of ministry, Christian ministry in our case, but not necessarily so. There'll be people who feel that they want to take this side of life seriously in their daily work and in their lives together, in their family life, in their community life.
And were there any famous students you might have taught who?
No, although I was once asked at an interview, which would you rather be, the person who wrote a famous book or a person who taught somebody who did very well? And I immediately said somebody who taught very well. I think I have had some very good students, but I wouldn't want to make them too big-headed.
Okay, no names tonight then. Well, now, in the first half of the show, we were hearing from two very passionate representatives from Extinction Rebellion and their passion for saving the planet and the fact that as a culture, as a system, as a society throughout the world, we're not doing enough to change. We're living beyond our means.
Yes.
We're damaging the
Absolutely.
planet. Do you share their concern?
I do indeed. Yeah. I am absolutely committed to this. I think in the last sort of 6 months or a year, there has been a sharp recognition that this is true. I have been convinced of it for at least 10, 15, 20 years. And that it's not going to go away. And that we've got, first of all, to control ourselves, control the way we use the planet, the way we draw sustenance and exploit its resources. And we've got to accept the fact that we're going to live in a very different world in the next few years. One of the reasons I came to Cardiff was to be nearer a family, and my family contains 3 5-year-old grandchildren, triplets, and I am anxious about the world that they're going to grow up in.
It really is that serious.
It is that serious.
Yeah. So the opportunities that we've had growing up in the middle of the 20th century are perhaps, if I'm reading you correctly, those opportunities aren't going to be there for us to choose our careers, to choose how much travel we have, how much holiday we can do.
We have been very lucky. What the French call the 30 years, the 30 years after the Second World War, when the West certainly, not necessarily the whole globe, but the West certainly has had a period of prosperity. And unfortunately, the economic structures and the way in which we have used those opportunities have in fact been destructive rather than constructive. So Greta Thunberg is right. We have in fact spoiled the planet. This is not to say that everybody is equally involved or engaged or guilty of this. Some of us have striven to try and, for instance, to have international economic justice. But the new dimension is this ecological dimension that we now have to face, which we were in the, say, 50s, 60s, 70s were ignorant of.
I think we've been brought up, some of us have been brought up believing that whatever issue arises, science can solve it, or throwing money at it can solve it.
Absolutely. These are the two tricks that we always seem to think that will happen. Yes, we do need the science, we do need the technology, we do need to know how to, for instance, move from carbon fuels to non-carbon energy and so on, and that is largely a technical problem. We do need, as it were, to divert our resources to the best things and the good things, but this is not going to answer the problem. In the end, it is a matter of conscience, of will, of having a concept of where life wants to go and what is the purpose of our existence. It's a cultural issue. As much as it is a technical or an economic issue.
And as I've come to understand over my life in the world of leadership and management and running a church, culture is something that people have. It's something that they are.
That's right.
It's not something that we say, oh, we'll choose this culture today.
No. It's inbred in you. You grow up into it. Yeah. You absorb it, but you can in fact criticize it. You can in fact stand back from it and say no, and you can take steps which tend to be limited to move and shift, like shifting the Queen Mary. It takes a long time to take a new course, but you can in fact do it. The trouble is we haven't got the time.
You mentioned noticing something happening over the last 6 months.
Yes, this is things like Extinction Rebellion and Greta Thunberg and all this, which has raised the whole temperature so that suddenly this is at the top of the news rather than at the bottom of the news. Indeed. Or incidental.
So where does theology come into this?
I think we've touched on it already. Theology is, as I said earlier, talking about faith, thinking about how faith impacts on our lives, what faith, as it were, demands from us, and all the rest of it, and how it should become part of our inner being. So, theology is part of this cultural reflection that we need to be doing, asking ourselves, what are the deep issues of life? What is the purpose of life? Where does faith, God, ethical responsibility, climate responsibility come in all this? And to pray about it. It needs to be part of our devotional life. Okay. Our liturgy, in Christian terms, in our liturgical life, our prayer life, our congregational life, but also in the personal faith life. We need, as it were, to ask that our perspectives be changed and deepened and widened so that we are moving into a new world. A world in which we treasure the earth, we do not abuse it, we use it sensibly and sensitively. We are friends with the birds and the bees and the animals and so on, and see them as part of our being rather than backcloth or just nice, pretty things to look at.
So if we have a relationship with God, then it's about recognizing that relationship in prayer. And wherever we are on the spectrum of understanding climate change or not understanding what's going on with creation, at least we can say to God, it's your world, you made it.
Yep.
Help us to know how to live better in this world.
Yes, that's right. It's yes. We need a creation theology.
Yeah.
We need a spirituality that says creation is at the heart of what we are all about.
And this actually, although both you and I are Christian, and so we're probably looking through a lens of Christian theology, but I think respect for the earth, which supports us. We have a common phrase in the English language of Mother Nature.
Yes.
Is something that surely any faiths would embrace.
I certainly agree with you on that one. I'm not an interfaith aficionado. I do not know an awful lot about other people's faith traditions. You can't do everything, but yes, I think every faith will have its own. Certainly, the scriptures that the Jews and the Christians have in common has this embedded in it, and this would all equally be true of Islam. I have a lovely quote here from the Quran: "No creature is there crawling on earth, no bird flying with its wings, but they are nations like unto yourselves." I think that's rather nice. The Eastern religions, Buddhism and Hinduism and so on, have a slightly different notion of the relationship between God and creation. But it is equally true that for instance, in Buddhism, that care and respect for the natural world is as important as care and respect for yourself and for your neighbour. So.
But here we are in a moment of crisis. I say a moment. We've managed to get into the 21st century. And I think when the century turned, the year 2000, we all thought we were leaving behind a world full of wars and fighting. And then we had 9/11 and other things that have happened since. And we realised that we're no better civilised as a world population than we ever have been.
Yes, that is an interesting comment. Years and years ago, I found a remark by a very eminent Protestant theologian, Emil Brunner, which suggests that while we may have moved on technologically, as it were, human nature has not really changed morally. And I think that's probably true. We just have to find new ways of doing good and doing evil. Don't forget the good bit, though.
Yes.
there are good bits. There are people of goodwill. There are people who are saints and generous and who live daily lives of generosity and faithfulness and all the rest of it. But we're all caught up in this funny human nature, which somehow or others doesn't seem to be able to control itself.
There is something flawed about human nature when it is not managed by relationship with God.
Yes, and sometimes even when it is.
Yes. Yes, of course. No, I do agree. Now, I mentioned that you lead the Peterborough Eco-Faith Network.
Yes.
Well, what is that about?
Well, that is something that came out of some work that the Churches Together in Central Peterborough did some 8 or 9 years ago. And a group of us decided that it would be important that Christians had a point of reference in this whole area. So it's a small group, which is basically an email group, and anybody can join it. Doesn't matter who you are and what you. Anybody can join it, but it comes out of and is supported by the churches. It's about encouraging Christians who may find themselves passionate, as I am passionate, but not having support from their faith community, to be able to recognise each other and work together. And there are national bodies like this, like Green Christian, to help the churches put this issue higher up on the agenda, to encourage churches to respond to this positively, and also to support and work with others in the community who are concerned with this.
It's great that has emerged out of a Churches Together group, churches working together, working in a united way. But is the church as a whole in this country doing enough to raise the awareness and change that culture that you mentioned was so necessary?
I think the churches find it as hard as the normal average population. But there have been developments. For instance, all the Anglican dioceses have advisors to the bishops. There are programs in most of the denominations trying to help move their churches in this direction, both in terms of their thinking and praying, but also in terms of their practice. How are you using your buildings? How are you using any land you've got? How are you heating and controlling the lighting and so on in your buildings? This sort of thing. There's quite a lot of that, but that it takes a long time for this sort of thing to percolate through especially into the local communities. Although some local Christian communities have taken this whole issue up. For instance, there is a thing called Eco Church, which is a national project, which any congregation, and the example I have from locally is St Ives Free Church and St John's in Peterborough, who then do an audit as to how they are faring along this. They have a checklist to do it and work, as it were, towards a recognition that they have actually done something in this way.
Wonderful.
Other congregations do all sorts of things. For instance, they use their land properly. The graveyards, for instance, can become havens of wildlife. Some have solar panels. Some have deep heating.
We're coming, Paul, to the end of our show.
There
are some great ideas coming out here. We must hear more on this. But thank you, Paul Ballard, Professor Paul Ballard, for sharing your insights into the world we believe God has not only created, but also given to us to take care of. And of course, many thanks to our earlier guests, Anna Bunton and Virginia Alfaro from Extinction Rebellion, and not forgetting Imtiaz Ali and his Three Peaks Challenge, raising funds for decorating the bathroom at the Amazon ward at Peterborough City Hospital. Well, that's all we have time for tonight on Community Matters. So from me, Adrian Holdstock, Salam, Shalom, Namaste, and the peace of God to you all. Good night.